Welcome back to my channel. Today I decided to come live again. And if you are new watching or coming across my channel, then my name is Radhika Piyari Dasi, and I share spiritual stuff here. And just let me just adjust the camera nicely. Okay. So yes, today here it is Ekadashi. Ashada Ekadashi, and I decided that why not to share the glories of the Ashadi Ekadashi. Now, please forgive me for my voice today. Last night it was very hot. The weather here is very unpredictable. Last night it was very hot, and so I turned on the AC, and I forgot to turn it off, and then it just jammed me completely. So just forgive me in between if I face through something. But yes, I wanted to share with all of you because I think it's in India. It's already the Ekadashi is going on, but it started for us today. So I thought why not to just share about the glories of Ashadi Ekadashi. So if you are on to it, I'll just wait for 1 2 people more, and I'll just start with the glories of the Ashadi Ekadashi. Vishnu Vidaya Krishna Vishaya Bhutalesh. Namaste Saraswati Devi Shri Gauravani Pracharane Nirvisesha Shinivadi Pashyati Kishkarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Sadguru Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. So I will start with the glories, and any questions or anything if any one person has, if you are joining in between, I will answer after that. Okay, so the story begins where in the Dwapar Yuga, once Lord Yudhishthir, like the Emperor Lord Yudhishthir Maharaj, he actually asked Keshava that what is that Ekadashi which falls during the light fortnight. Light fortnight means the Shukla Paksha. Shukla Paksha is the waxing moon. Waxing moon means the moon which goes towards Purnima. So what is that Ekadashi which falls during the light fortnight of the month of Ashada? The month of Ashada, which is June, July. So, and who is the worshipable deity during that time, and everything he asks to Lord Keshava. So Lord Keshava becomes very pleased, and then he says that, okay, I will narrate to you this one incident where the same question, Hare Krishna, the same question was actually asked by by Sri Narad Muni to Lord Brahma. Now, ideally, Narad Muni is actually the son of Lord Brahma. So he asks the same question. He says that how can he perform this Ashadi Ekadashi in order to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the worshipable deity in this particular Ekadashi, and what all things he can do in order to please Lord Keshava. So Brahmaji says that he glorifies actually Narad Muni. He says that you are such a pure devotee, and your intention of performing this Ekadashi fasting or Ekadashi is to actually please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he actually explains that this particular Ekadashi, the Lord of, like the deity of this particular Ekadashi is actually Lord Rishikesha. Rishikesha means the master of the senses, the one who controls the senses. So that particular deity has to be worship during this day, and that's why when we do this Ekadashi, we actually make a prayer to Lord Rishikesha, keeping in mind that, oh Lord Hari, please control my senses. So what happens is he starts, Narad Muni says that there is actually an incident, a very nice story which can be discussed during this particular, like how this particular Ekadashi became so much more glorious. So he describes about an event, an historical event during the time of Satya Yuga. So during the time of Satya Yuga, what happened is that there was a king. His name was Mandhata. Now, he was a very saintly king, very amazingly religious and pious king, and his ability and his capability to stand up for the truth made the subjects like he actually became the emperor, like the samrat of the world. So he was actually ruling the, and this is the he was actually the king of the Surya Vamsha, means the Surya dynasty, and would always whatever activity he would do it with religiosity and with lot of piety and with lot of truth. So because of this, what happened, because when the king performs certain activity, the entire kingdom faces a reaction, either good or either bad, based on the activity of the king. So because he was so pious, he was so religious, and he was doing all the activities so much with so much truth, his entire kingdom never faced any kind of drought or famine or any kind of diseases. Even the subjects, his subjects, were not just free from disturbances, but they also were very wealthy. So the king's treasury, which like his own personal treasury, had no tinge of black money. Means it was full of white money. It was free from any kind of ill uh, participation. So everything was going good in the kingdom, and then what happened one day was there appeared a drought in the kingdom, and this lasted for 3 years. Now there was drought because, and then there was no water, and then there was also famine. So the what was happening is that people were, because there is no water and there is no growth of crops or anything, and then also there was no, because if there is no grains, there is no water, then people will die, like the kingdom, the people who live in the kingdom, they will die, and then out of fear they would leave the kingdom. So those things were happening, and the subjects were getting worried, because the subjects would perform, like the rishis and all, they needed water, they needed grains to perform sacrificial Vedic sacrifices in the yajna, so that because of which the demigods can be pleased and there can be enough rain in. But there no such things were there, so it was getting very troublesome. It was lasting for 3 years. So then what happened was, the subjects finally decided that we need to go to the king and actually explain to him how difficult the situation is arising. So then they go to the king, and then they start glorifying the king first, that how the kingdom has been peaceful because of his piety, his religiosity, and everything. And then they say about the current situation, that how there has been drought, there has been famine, there has been all this issue going on, and there is no water. And they explained about that how water is so much essential. And the subject said that the old king, this water is like, the water is also called Nara. Nara means water, and the supreme personality of Godhead, because he makes his own abode on the top of water or Nara. That's why it's called Narayan. And sometimes water is also called as Jalanarayan. Jalanarayan means because the supreme personality of God, in the potency of like water, he enters into the potency of water and actually helps sustain the entire world, because no one can really survive without water on this earthly plane. So then they explained to the king that how three things which cannot remain, cannot sustain or cannot exist if water is not present. So one is the pearl, the second one is the human beings, and the third one is the flower. So the pearl is like it has its luster because of the water. The second thing is a human being. A human being actually has the man's essence is a semen, and that exists because of water. So that living force will not go on continuing if there is no water. And the third thing is the flower, because the flower, if there is no water, there is no liquid, it cannot be binded into a dough. So they were explaining these things, that how there has been this disturbances and the water is not there, and because of this there is no crops, there is no grains, there is no food, people are dying, people are leaving the kingdom. Then the king hears this, and then he replies to the subjects, and he says that you're very absolutely right, because the grains are actually the absolute truth in one sense. They are like Brahman, because the Lord is present in his potency, like in his form, in the grains, in a way that when the Lord sustains everyone through these grains. Everyone needs to eat, proper grains and crops and all that, so that they can sustain themselves. So, I personally have um, meditated, and I looked into my past and my present activities, and I'm trying to think, what did I really do wrong, or what kind of sinful activity have I done that this particular situation has arisen. I really don't know what I really did. So I cannot find any fault in my actions. Or so then he says that, okay, but I'm still going to look into this and find a way to actually do a remedy towards it. So then what happens is that the king Mandata, he goes with, like, he arranges his entire army and entourage, and then he goes to the forest to look for rishis and sages to find a solution for this. So when he is going deep into the forest, at that time he come across an ashram, and there is another son of Brahma, Lord Brahma, Angira Muni. Now, when Angira Muni, he sees Angira Muni, he gets down from his chariot and he pays his obeisances, offers his respects, and then he's asking for his blessings. And Angira Muni is very pleased. And then Angira Muni ask him the questions about the welfare of the seven limbs of the kingdom. Now, what are the seven limbs of the kingdom? The first one is the king himself, then comes the minister, then comes his treasury, the military forces, his allies, the Brahmins, and the Vedic sacrifices which happen in the kingdom. So he asks welfare about those things to the king. Then, after asking about this, then he asks the king about how he himself is doing. So the king says that everything was going good, but then this particular thing happened where he doesn't know why there is so much famine, there is drought, and all this disturbance is going on in the kingdom. So Angira Muni, he says to the king that there is actually a Shudra in your kingdom who has been actually doing he's uninitiated and he's untrained and he is unlawfully performing some austerities and penances which are not right, and that is the reason why you are facing all these things. So the solution for having rains and not to go through this particular calamity, natural disaster, is that you kill that Shudra right at once. The king becomes, because he's a saintly king, he becomes completely shocked that how can I do that? How can I really do that with anyone who is like trying to perform austerity or penances? So he says to the Muni that, it is not possible. Someone is doing austerity and penances, and how can I just be so mean and then just kill them for doing this? It's like offenseless person, right? So how can I do this? Can you find some spiritual solution through which I can actually curb this particular action? So Angira Muni talks about this particular Ekadashi, which is called the Ashada Ekadashi. He says that this Ekadashi is also called as Padma Ekadashi, and on this Ekadashi, if anyone performs the fasting very strictly with all devotion in their heart, then all their sins is eradicated and at once, and also they get all their wishes fulfilled, and also they become a candidate towards liberation. It is also mentioned that, like, he also mentions that if one doesn't perform this Ekadashi, then they become also a candidate for hell. So the king listens to this and he says that in order for you to, the Muni says that in order for you to come out of the situation, then you have to fast from this particular Ekadashi, fast on this Ekadashi along with your relatives. Ask your relatives, ask your subjects, everyone to perform this Ekadashi, and then you will finally get rid of that calamity of drought and famine, and rains will come in, and then the crops will grow. So the king pays his obeisances back to Angira Muni, and then he goes back and he tells all these things to his subjects, and then they all perform Ekadashi. Everyone performs Ekadashi very strictly, nicely, and they remember the Lord, meditate on the Lord, purify themselves like that. And this Ekadashi becomes successful. As soon as that Ekadashi is performed in Satyuga, right away the rain comes in, and then also the crops grows in, and that particular calamity gets curbed by because of performing this fasting very nicely. So this is the pastime of Ashadi Ekadashi, and this is the glories. Anyone who hears this pastimes, anyone who hears or meditates or reads this pastime, they also become freed from all at once all of their past sinful activities, and becomes a candidate for towards liberation. So this particular Ekadashi is also called as Devshayani Ekadashi or Vishnu Shayani Ekadashi. Now, why it is called Devshayani and Vishnu Shayani is because during this time period when the Chaturmas, usually ideally what happens is for the Tithi on this Ekadashi only the Chaturmasya first month begins. But this time, like for us in the West, it starts on the 13th Chaturmasya begins. But today, usually what happens is that on this day, especially on this Ekadashi, the Devas go to sleep, and Lord Hari, Lord Keshava, Vishnu, he goes into Yog Nidra, and that is the reason why any kind of auspicious events like marriages and kind of ceremonies and kinds of openings and all kind of like very new beginnings are not done during this time, because none of the demigods are going to appear in the fire sacrificial yajna, and it's not good to disturb them, and Lord is also in yoga nidra. So this is the reason why this particular from this particular Ekadashi onwards until the 4 months, when the last month of the Chaturmasya is when the Kartik Damodar month ends on the Devothani Ekadashi, which is also known as Haribodhini Ekadashi. That time this period ends. So until that time period, no very auspicious events are performed. So I think I covered everything about this Ekadashi. I hope you stayed until the end about this Ekadashi, and you are already in India. If you're already in India, then you have performed this Ekadashi nicely. Remember the Lord. Ekadashi starts for us today, so I'm praying that we chant nicely, we pray nicely, we meditate, we read and remember the Lord nicely, and mark our way back to Godhead, hopefully. So, thank you so much for watching, and please write to me in the comment section if you are not live, and if you are able to see the video later. Do watch this video today itself, because this is about Ekadashi, and I will try to come on live more as much as I can. Okay, so thank you very much. Hare Krishna.